as with any good story, the book of Esther contains heroes, villains, romance, suspense, and an all is well that ends well conclusions. In all honesty, every year I cringe as I go over the beginning of the story and even hear comments about it from women. I may also feel uncomfortable with the fact that children are present as we speak of the king's indecent request. Indecent. What? Indecent. Okay, I lose my paper now. Okay, here we go. Indecent request. Where am I? From his queen. And whereas the story, as it is written in the Tanakh, is correct in its own rights, we may need outside help to dispel some of the assumptions surrounding it, especially the assumptions concerning Queen Vashti. The story in the book of Esther starts with a pagan king asking his wife to display herself to his drunk friends as they revel in a pagan feast. Preserving her honor, modesty, and dignity, Queen Vashti refuses, and as a result, loses her place as queen to be replaced by Esther. This story raises a lot of questions. I would dare to claim that all women, here at least, would stand with Vashti and her right to not be displayed like some kind of 4-H heifer to be admired and evaluated by drunk livestock owners. She agrees.
Amen.
And I've actually heard when starting this story, I've heard here some comments saying, well, hey, of course. I've heard it from women. I would also claim that all women would or should be disgusted at this husband and king's request. Why is she then often looked at as the bad wife in the story? And why would a man, and most especially a king, ask his wife and queen to do such a thing that would be so reprehensible even in that Babylonian society? By making Vashti one of the quote-unquote villains in the story, don't reside with the indecent, lewd actions of a pagan king while reviling a woman trying to preserve her virtue, even at a very high personal cost. Looking at some of the midrashic, Jewish midrashic texts concerning this story may help us make better sense of it. We must first look at who was Vashti to start with. Midrashic text from Esther Rabbah, which is a Jewish commentary, sheds some light as to her identity, which then may explain a lot of things. Remember that regarding prophecy and certain Bible stories, we cannot properly understand them unless we get the context, which is what we've been doing this whole year as we've been reading the prophecies. Who was Queen Vashti? Do you remember the story in Daniel 5 when Belshazzar, the grandson of Nebuchadnezzar, hosted a pagan feast in his palace? Maybe they ran out of dishes, but for whatever reason, they decided to use the utensils that were looted from the Jewish temple as dishes for their impious feast. This is when the king couldn't read the writing of a hand that appeared and wrote on a wall. So he had to call Daniel to interpret it for him. Midrashic history book tell us a little bit more what happened that night. The Midrash Esther Rabbah, recounts that Darius the Mede, who became King Darius, was a guest that night, and Darius was not a royal roots. He was a guest that night at Belshazzar's impious feast. It also says that the heavy gold temple candelabrum, the menorah, fell and dashed Belshazzar's brain. So don't use God's dishes. He don't like it. Thus knocking some sense into him. Belshazzar being dead, Darius was crowned king in his stead. And he sat in Belshazzar's customary place. The death of Belshazzar created total pandemonium in the palace. Some killed while others engaged in looting. Vashti, who was Belshazzar's daughter, was a young girl at the time. In the tumult, thinking her father was still alive and mistaking him for King Darius, she accidentally sat in his lap. King Darius took pity on her and married her to his son Ahasuerus. Who was Ahasuerus? According to midrashic tradition, again, whereas Vashti was of royal blood, Ahasuerus was not. He was actually Vashti's father's steward who took care of his royal stables. He acquired royal status only by marrying Queen Vashti. What's wrong? We don't want the glass. Sorry. Yellow. I don't know. Opinions differ concerning Vashti in the midrashes written from Babylon and those written in Israel. So a midrash is a bit of an explanation, a commentary like the expounded version with all the details we don't have just in the story. And some people in Babylon wrote about Queen Esther, and some people in Israel wrote about Queen Esther, and both of them wrote different accounts. In Babylon, Vashti was seen as the granddaughter of an evil emperor who burned the temple and caused the exile of the people of Judea. As a result, they had nothing good to say about her, and as is naturally done to people with whom we have a beef, she was described in Babylonian midrashes as a licentious, immoral woman guilty of everything and every sin in the book. That is very questionable, though, when we can see plainly in the story that she would rather send her dignity and honor to keep her modesty even at the cost of losing her crown. If she was so loose and licentious, why did she have a problem with the king's request? In contrast to the negative depiction of Vashti by the Babylonian rabbis, their counterpart in the land of Israel portrayed her in a positive manner. Vashti was a scion of royal dynasty. Does anybody know what the word scion, S-C-I-O-N, means?
It's a car.
Yes. Actually, it is.
It means grafted.
Interesting.
A scion is a grafting. And that's what's translated as Zion. C-O-R. Explanation for another day.
Okay.
But Vashti was a scion of royal dynasty. She was royal. And they say, the rabbis from Israel, they say that by keeping to her modesty, even at the price of her crown, she deported herself with her propriety, honor, and nobility. Here's how the story of Ahasuerus' impious feast is told in the midrashes from Israel. When Ahasuerus sent his ministers to bring Vashti in an attempt to persuade him to withdraw his demand, she sent him messages to which she hoped he would be receptive. She said to the king, first thing she said, "If they see me and think me beautiful, they'll want me and they'll kill you. And if they see me and think I'm ugly, you'll be disgraced." That was her first argument. You don't want to do that, right? Anyway, you lose. In a second message, she said, "You were my father's steward, and you were accustomed to having naked harlots come before you. Now that you have become king, you have not mended your depraved ways." She tries to appeal to that. Didn't work. Her third message was, "You want me to come naked? Even my father, when he judged litigants in a trial, would not judge them like that." She tried to appeal to them. That's how the rabbis from Israel explained it. Queen Vashti, in the midrashes from Israel, is blessed with wisdom. She cleverly seeks different ways by which to persuade Ahasuerus to withdraw his request. First, she appeals to logic by setting forth all the possible scenarios that may result from his demand, all of which are to his disadvantage. Then she addresses his sense of honor and self-respect, demanding that he act as is fitting for a king. Finally, she appeals to his compassion and asks that he not insist upon her appearing naked before all his guests. By means of her messengers, Vashti hints to her husband that he does not consider the consequences of his actions and reminds him that he wields the scepter only because of his marriage to her. Accordingly, it is not appropriate that he orders her to do something against her will. In the Midrash from Israel, the readers see Ahasuerus in contrast to Vashti as a ruler who acts rashly, does not think even one single step ahead. The hints that his wife sends Ahasuerus merely bounce off the thick-headed king. Even in his palace, his behavior is inappropriate, and he continues to act in a disgraceful manner, like a steward, like a man with an inferiority complex and things to prove because he married over his head, losing their control over all women in the empire and sought to make a shameful example of her. The Midrash also talks about one of these ministers called Memucan, who is the minister who suggested Vashti's exile, and who had a personal agenda, as he hoped his own daughter would be the one to marry the king. In conclusion, we can see that the Israeli Midrash portrays Vashti as a good woman who preserved her dignity, while King Ahasuerus is the one who did not behave like a king, showing respect to his wife and his queen. But he acted no better than a depraved, drunken stable boy who was accustomed to using women of low honor for his own gratification. In the midrashic depiction, when Ahasuerus grew sober, he regretted what he had done. He later recalled Vashti and her noble behavior, and he also remembered how he had improperly condemned her when he was drunk. Another tradition has Ahasuerus wanting and asking his wife when the effects of his intoxication wore off. Not remembering what had happened, he was told, "You killed her." He asked, "Why?" They replied, "You said for her to come before you naked, and she didn't." He admitted to them, "I did not act nicely." "And who counseled me to kill her?" They told him, "The 7 ministers of Persia and Media." He immediately killed them. Consequently, the 7 eunuchs are not mentioned again in the book of Esther. And this is all the article is on the ebook with references of these things. We do read in the book of Esther that the king ceased to call upon Esther, who had previously found great favor with him. Could it be that the king regretted his lewd actions and was plagued with remorse and guilt? Either way, Queen Vashti's choices paved the way for a Jewish queen to arise and save her people with the help of a king who perhaps had been humbled and learned to honor and listen to his wife. So basically, Queen Vashti doing that had as much, Queen Vashti trying to preserve her honor and dignity, had as much to do with Esther becoming queen and saving the people as Esther herself. So I hope you can find all that with the reference in the ebook. So now we're going to read about Esther.